The desert stretched out in eerie silence, a vast expanse of sand and jagged rocks under a canopy of glittering stars. Cal Grayson's wrench slipped from his grasp as the ground trembled beneath him. He froze, instinctively scanning the horizon, and then it came, the blinding streak of light tearing across the sky. The impact shook the air, a deafening roar rolling like thunder as flames erupted over the distant ridge. "What the hell?" Cal muttered, grabbing his flashlight and shotgun. He hopped into his battered rover, the engine coughing to life as he raced toward the crash site. As he neared the scene, the devastation became clear. Twisted metal gleamed in the moonlight, the shattered remnants of some kind of vessel, nothing human-made, he was sure of that. Flames licked the air as sparks rained down from mangled conduits, the acrid scent of burning metal clawing at his nostrils. Then he saw her. A figure lay amidst the wreckage, her body faintly glowing as if lit from within. Her skin was silver, almost metallic, and intricate patterns shimmered along her arms. Long strands of hair, seemingly woven with light, splayed around her face. She was clutching a strange crystal, its pulsing blue light the only thing unscathed by the crash. Cal jumped out of the rover, shotgun in hand, and cautiously approached. "Hey, are you?" Her eyes snapped open, blazing with an intensity that stopped him mid-sentence. "Help me," she rasped, her voice reverberating unnaturally. "Take the core before it's too late." "The what?" Cal took a step back, gripping his shotgun tighter. "No time," she gasped, pushing the glowing crystal toward him with trembling hands. "The Xyrax are coming. If they find me, they will take the core. They will take my body. You must claim it." Before Cal could process her words, a high-pitched whine split the air. He spun around just in time to see a cluster of sleek, spider-like drones descending from the sky. Their red optics locked onto the wreckage, beams of light scanning feverishly. "Move," the woman shouted, dragging herself toward him. "They will not hesitate." Cal didn't argue. Slinging the shotgun over his shoulder, he reached down and hoisted her up, surprised by how light she was. She clung to him weakly as he staggered back to the rover, the crystal in her hand now glowing brighter, as if agitated. The drone screeched and pivoted toward them. "Get in," Cal barked, throwing her into the passenger seat. He jumped behind the wheel and slammed his foot on the gas. The rover roared forward, dirt and rocks spraying behind them. A burst of energy lashed out from one of the drones, scorching the ground inches from their wheels. Cal cursed, swerving hard to avoid another blast. "What the hell are those things?" "Xyrax hunters," the woman said weakly. "They are merciless. If they take the core, all is lost." Cal glanced at her, bewildered. "And why exactly is this core my problem?" She looked at him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "Because it chose you." Before Cal could respond, another blast struck the rover's rear axle. The vehicle skidded violently, and he fought to keep control. Through the rearview mirror, he saw the drones gaining, their metallic limbs glinting in the moonlight. "Hang on," Cal growled, yanking the wheel and sending the rover careening toward a narrow canyon. The drones followed, their energy weapons lighting up the night. As they entered the canyon, Cal spotted an overhang of loose rocks ahead. An idea formed, reckless and desperate. "You'd better pray this works, lady." The woman's faint smile startled him. "I already am." At the last second, Cal slammed the brakes and spun the rover sideways, sending it skidding to a stop beneath the overhang. The pursuing drones shot past, their sensors locked on the rover's previous trajectory. Cal grabbed his shotgun and jumped out, aiming for the precarious rocks above. One blast. That's all it took. The overhang collapsed, a torrent of boulders and debris crashing down onto the drones. Sparks flew as their metallic forms were crushed beneath tons of rock. Cal exhaled heavily, his hands trembling. He turned back to the woman, still slumped in the passenger seat, clutching the glowing crystal. "You want to tell me what the hell's going on now?" She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with gratitude and desperation. "Human, you now own my body. Protect the core or we both die." The safe house was dark, tucked into a forgotten corner of the Nevada desert. The structure blended into the rocky terrain, its entrance concealed behind an outcrop of boulders. Inside, Cal sealed the door and activated an old generator. Dim, flickering lights buzzed to life, revealing shelves of tools, gear, and a single cot in the corner. Cal set the alien woman down gently on the cot. She clutched the glowing crystal, the core, to her chest like her life depended on it, which, as far as Cal could tell, it did. "You've got 10 seconds to start explaining," Cal said, pacing as adrenaline coursed through him. "What are those things chasing us? What's this core? And what the hell did you mean by me owning your body?" The woman, still weak but recovering, looked at him with those luminous silver eyes. "My name is Aria, Princess of the Starborn Dominion. That core," she held it up, its pulsing light bathing the room in an ethereal glow, "is the heart of my people's defense. Without it, my planet is vulnerable to annihilation." Cal leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Okay, so you're royalty. That doesn't explain why you shoved that thing at me like it was a hot potato." Aria flinched, her expression torn between urgency and reluctance. "The core is not just a weapon. It is selective. It chooses only the purest of beings to bond with, unlocking its full potential. When the Zyrax destroyed my ship, I had no choice but to come here. I hoped that Earth might have someone worthy." Her gaze bore into him, intense and unyielding. "It chose you," Cal scoffed. "Me? Lady, I'm a washed-up mechanic, not some galactic savior." Arius sat up, her strength returning faster than he expected. "You're more than you think. The core doesn't make mistakes. But its bond comes with a cost." "Of course it does," Cal muttered, rubbing his temples. "What kind of cost?" Before she could answer, a piercing sound filled the room. The safe house shook as something heavy slammed against the outer door. Cal grabbed his shotgun, heart pounding. "They found us," Aria said, her voice sharp. "The Zyrax tracking beast. It locks onto neural imprints. Ours are intertwined now because of the core." "Fantastic," Cal growled. He moved to a nearby console, activating the perimeter cameras. The screen flickered to show a massive, spider-like creature with glowing red eyes and mechanical limbs digging into the door. Behind it, more drones hovered, their weapons charging. "We're sitting ducks in here," Cal yelled, turning to Aria. "The core can shield us," Aria said, gripping it tightly, "but only if it's fully bonded to you. You must undergo the ritual of synchronization." "Ritual?" Cal threw up his hands. "I don't do rituals, lady." "You will or we both die." Aria snapped back, her regal composure cracking under the weight of their situation. "The core tests its host. If you're unworthy, it will consume you. But if you succeed, its power will awaken, and we can escape." The pounding on the door grew louder. Sparks flew as the beast began melting the metal with its plasma claws. Cal looked at Aria, her silver skin glowing faintly in the light of the core. She wasn't just desperate, she was terrified. "Fine," Cal said, stepping forward. "What do I do?" Aria placed the core in his hands. Its pulsing energy sent a jolt through his body, almost knocking him off his feet. "Focus," she instructed. "Let the core see who you are. It will search your mind, your memories, your heart. You must not resist." Cal closed his eyes as the core's light enveloped him. Instantly, his mind was flooded with images, snapshots of his life. His time as a soldier, his failures, the faces of people he'd lost. The weight of regret he carried every day. The core's voice echoed in his mind, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "What drives you, human? Why do you fight?" Cal gritted his teeth, feeling as though his soul was being dissected. "I fight because someone has to," he muttered. Because if I don't, people get hurt." The core's glow intensified, almost blinding. "Your pain is great, but your resolve is greater. You are worthy." As the light receded, Cal collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The core was no longer in his hands. Its light had sunk into his chest, leaving a faint, glowing mark over his heart. "What happened?" he asked, struggling to his feet. Aria's expression softened, a mix of relief and awe. "You did it. The core is yours now." The door finally gave way, and the Zyrax tracking beast lunged into the room, its red eyes fixed on them. Cal barely had time to react as Arya grabbed his arm. "Use the core," she urged. "Feel its power." Cal raised his hands instinctively, and a wave of energy erupted from him. The beast froze mid-leap, its limbs shattering as the energy enveloped it. The drones outside exploded one by one as the core's power pulsed through the safe house like a storm. When the dust settled, Cal stood in the ruins of the safe house, his body trembling but alive. Arya approached him, her silver eyes filled with gratitude. "You are no ordinary human, Cal Grayson," she said softly. "The core has chosen well." Cal looked at her, then at the destruction around them. "Yeah, well, I hope the core knows what it's doing. Because I've got a feeling this is just the beginning." Outside, the desert night was still, but far above, more Zyrax ships descended through the atmosphere, their engines glowing ominously in the dark. The bunker trembled as another explosion reverberated through the ground. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, and the faint glow of Arya's core reflected off Cal's sweat-soaked face. The rhythmic pounding of the Zyrax hunters' mechanical feet grew louder as they closed in on the underground hideout. Cal paced near the cot where Arya rested, her energy still recovering from the earlier escape. "You said this bonding thing would give me power. All I feel is a ticking time bomb in my chest. What now?" Arya opened her eyes, her voice strained but urgent. "The core's energy isn't fully synchronized with you yet. You've unlocked its potential, but until you learn to channel it, it's unpredictable. If you lose control—" Yeah, I explode," Cal interrupted. "You've mentioned that part a few times." A distant screech interrupted their exchange. The hair on Cal's neck stood on end as the sound reverberated through the bunker. "What the hell was that?" he asked, grabbing his shotgun. Arya's face darkened. "The Zyrax tracking beast. Its claws can tear through reinforced titanium, and its mind is connected to the entire hunter fleet. It's only a matter of time before they breach. And you're just now telling me this?" Cal barked, his voice tinged with panic. Arya stood, steadying herself against the wall. "We don't have time for arguments. The core has chosen you, Cal. Its energy is your weapon now. If you don't learn to use it, we're both dead." The bunker's lights flickered, and a loud metallic screech signaled the creature's claws slicing into the outer door. Cal looked at Arya, then at his own hands, glowing faintly with the core's energy. "Fine," he muttered, slinging the shotgun over his shoulder. "Tell me what to do." Arya stepped closer, her silver eyes locking onto his. "The core responds to intent. Focus on what you want, whether it's to defend, to attack, or to survive. It will amplify your will." "Great. No pressure," Cal muttered, shaking his head. The outer door finally gave way with a deafening crash, and the tracking beast surged into the bunker. It was massive, its 8 mechanical legs glinting under the dim light, each tipped with plasma claws that hissed and sparked. Its glowing red eyes scanned the room, locking onto Cal and Arya. Cal raised his shotgun out of reflex and fired, the shell ricocheting harmlessly off the creature's armored hide. "Well, that's just perfect." The beast lunged, its claws slicing through the air toward Arya. Acting on instinct, Cal thrust his hands forward. A wave of energy burst from his chest, slamming into the creature and sending it skidding back into the wall. Cal staggered, his chest heaving. "Did I just—" "You did," Arya said, her voice a mix of relief and awe. "But you'll need more than that to stop it." The beast recovered quickly, its limbs moving with eerie precision as it calculated its next attack. Cal could feel the core's energy swirling inside him, like a storm waiting to be unleashed. He closed his eyes, focusing on Arya's words, intent. The beast charged again, but this time Cal didn't move. He stood firm, his mind clear. As the creature closed the distance, a barrier of shimmering energy erupted around him and Arya, the creature's claws rebounding with a metallic screech. "Nice trick," Cal said through gritted teeth, sweat pouring down his face. "But I don't think this shield's gonna hold forever." Arya placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch grounding him. "The core's power is limitless, but it needs a purpose." "What do you want, Cal?" The creature hammered against the shield, cracks forming in the glowing energy. Cal clenched his fists, his thoughts racing. Memories of his life flashed before him, his failures, his regrets, the people he couldn't save. But now, Aria's voice cut through the chaos, steady and clear. "I want to protect you," he said, his voice steady. "I want to protect us." The core responded immediately. The cracks in the shield disappeared, and the energy surged outward in a brilliant wave. The tracking beast froze, its circuits sparking violently as the core's power overloaded its systems. With one final screech, the creature collapsed, its body disintegrating into ash. The bunker fell silent, save for Cal's heavy breathing. He sank to his knees, the glow of the core dimming as he regained control. "You did it," Aria said softly, kneeling beside him. Cal looked at her, a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief on his face. "That thing won't be the last, will it?" "No," Aria admitted. "The Zyrax will send more. They won't stop until they have the core." Cal's jaw tightened, and he pushed himself to his feet. "Then we'd better make sure they never get it." Outside, the distant hum of approaching ships grew louder. Aria glanced at Cal, her silver eyes filled with a newfound respect. "You're ready?" "Not even close," Cal said, loading his shotgun. "But I've got a feeling they won't like what's coming." Aria smiled faintly. "Perhaps the core chose better than I thought." The two moved quickly, preparing for the next wave. The core pulsed faintly in Cal's chest, a reminder of the power he now wielded and the responsibility that came with it. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. The bunker's crumbled remains were still glowing faintly from the battle with the tracking beast. Outside, the faint whine of approaching Zyrax ships filled the night air. Cal wiped the sweat from his brow and looked toward Aria, who was scanning the sky with a grim expression. "They're coming in fast," Aria said, clutching the glowing core embedded in Cal's chest. "And they won't make the same mistake twice." Cal pulled a rifle from the wreckage of the bunker, its worn barrel a stark contrast to the faintly glowing lines of energy now tracing his arms. He could feel the core's power humming through him, not fully understood but undeniably there. "They can throw what they want at us," he said, his voice calm but steely. "We'll take them down." Aria placed a hand on his arm, her luminous eyes locking onto his. "The core's power is great, but even it has limits. If you push too hard before fully synchronizing, you'll burn out. You're fighting not just for yourself, but for the survival of my people." "Well," Cal said with a wry grin, "guess I'd better not screw it up, then." Before Aria could respond, a deep, resonant boom shook the ground. The first Zyrax dropship descended like a predator, its sleek black hull bristling with weapons. As it landed, hatches opened, and a squad of elite Zyrax soldiers emerged, their armor gleaming and weapons already aimed at the pair. "Stay behind me," Cal said, stepping forward as the soldiers fanned out in formation. Aria's voice carried a warning. "They'll adapt quickly. Their tactics evolve mid-combat. Let's see how they adapt to this," Cal muttered. The first soldier opened fire, sending a streak of plasma toward Cal's. Time seemed to slow as the core's energy surged through him. Without thinking, he raised his hand, and a barrier of shimmering light materialized in front of him, absorbing the blast. The soldiers hesitated for a split second, recalculating their strategy. Cal didn't wait for them to act. He thrust his other hand forward, and a pulse of energy erupted from his chest, slamming into the soldiers and scattering them like bowling pins. Their armor sparked and short-circuited as they hit the ground. Cal turned back to Aria, his breathing heavy. "Still think I'm gonna burn out?" Her lips quirked in a faint smile. "You're better than I expected." But this was just the vanguard. As if on cue, the sky lit up with red streaks of light as more Zyrax dropships descended, each one larger and more heavily armed than the last. One of the ships opened fire, and a barrage of energy blasts rained down on their position. "Move!" Aria shouted, pulling Cal toward a nearby ridge. The two dove into cover just as the blasts obliterated what was left of the bunker. "All right," Cal said, catching his breath. "This might be a little above my pay grade." Aria crouched beside him, her voice urgent. "The core's energy can't be wasted on skirmishes. We need to get out of here and reach a safe point for you to fully synchronize." "Great plan," Cal said dryly. "You happen to have an escape route tucked in your pocket?" Aria hesitated, then pulled a small device from her belt. This beacon will summon a stealth vessel, but it will take a few minutes to arrive. Can you hold them off? Cal peeked over the ridge to see 3 more squads of Zyrax soldiers disembarking, accompanied by towering mechanical war machines that bristled with weaponry. He turned back to Arya, his face grim. Guess we're about to find out? He stood, gripping the rifle tightly. The core pulsed in his chest, its energy flowing through his veins like liquid fire. The war machines locked onto him, their cannons spinning up. Cal took a deep breath and let the core guide him. As the first machine fired, Cal leapt impossibly high, the core's power propelling him over the barrage. He landed on the machine's hull, driving his fist into its core. Energy surged from his body, frying the machine's circuits in an instant. The hulking metal giant crumpled to the ground, sparks flying. The soldiers opened fire, their shots filling the air with sizzling plasma. Cal moved like a blur, the core enhancing his reflexes. He dodged and weaved, returning fire with precision that left Zyrax troops falling in waves. Explosions rocked the battlefield, but Cal seemed untouchable, every step guided by the core's relentless energy. Arya watched from the ridge, her expression a mix of awe and concern. He's pushing too hard, she muttered to herself, activating the beacon. Cal, fall back. The ship is almost here. But Cal couldn't hear her over the roar of combat. The core pulsed brighter and brighter, its energy consuming him. His strikes grew more powerful, but each one drained him further. Sweat poured down his face, and his breaths came in ragged gasps. One of the war machines targeted Arya, its cannon charging. Cal's eyes widened as he saw the weapon swivel toward her. No, he roared, the core flaring with raw power. In a desperate move, he unleashed a massive wave of energy that swept across the battlefield, disintegrating the remaining soldiers and machines in an instant. The blast left Cal staggering, his vision swimming. The core's light dimmed, its energy spent. He collapsed to his knees as Arya rushed to his side. You can't keep doing this, she said, her voice tight with worry. The core's power is immense, but even it has limits. Cal gave her a weak grin. Good to know. So, where's that ship? A sleek, black stealth vessel appeared overhead, its cloaking field dropping as it descended. A ramp extended, and Arya helped Cal to his feet. We're not out of this yet, she said, guiding him toward the ship. As they boarded, the Zyrax forces regrouped in the distance, their larger warships beginning to descend. The stealth vessel lifted off just as the first warship fired, narrowly evading the blast. Inside, Cal slumped into a seat, his chest still glowing faintly. So, where to now? Arya looked at him, her expression both grateful and resolute. Now we prepare. The Zyrax won't stop until they have the core. But with its power, and with you, we have a chance? Cal nodded, the weight of his new role settling on him. The core pulsed faintly in his chest, as if acknowledging his resolve. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly before them. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, Cal felt like they might actually stand a chance. The stealth vessel glided through the quiet expanse of space, the remnants of Earth's atmosphere still visible in the rear viewport. Cal leaned against the bulkhead, his chest faintly glowing where the core pulsed within him. His breath was heavy, his body aching from the exertion of wielding the core's energy against the Zyrax forces. Arya sat across from him, her silver skin glowing softly in the dim cabin light. She was studying a holographic map, her expression focused but tinged with worry. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence. So, Cal began, breaking the tension, are we just going to run from these guys forever? Or do we have an actual plan? Arya's bioluminescent eyes flicked up to meet his. The core wasn't meant for running. It's meant for unity and defense. But its full potential hasn't been realized, not yet. Great, Cal muttered, rubbing his temples. Let me guess. I'm supposed to be the one to realize it. Arya stood, crossing the small cabin to stand before him. You're more than just the core's host, Cal. You're its guide. It responds to your intentions, your resolve. But it's also a weapon of last resort. She paused, her tone softening. The Zyrax don't just want the core, they fear it. They'll stop at nothing to destroy us before you can unlock its true power. Cal raised an eyebrow. You're throwing yourself into this fight too? Arya's gaze didn't waver. I'm not just a princess, Cal. I'm a protector of my people. If I fail, the Zyrax will not stop with Earth. They'll consume everything in their path. Before Cal could respond, the ship jolted violently. The alarms blared as Arya rushed to the cockpit, California close behind. The holographic display lit up, showing a massive Zyrax cruiser closing in on their position. They've tracked us already? Cal asked, gripping the back of Arya's chair. It's not a tracking signal, Arya said, her voice tense. They're sweeping the sector. We must have passed through their patrol net. The cruiser fired, a pulse of energy streaking toward them. Arya's hands flew across the controls, and the stealth ship dove sharply. The pulse grazed their hull, sending sparks flying and systems flickering. Cal grabbed the co-pilot's seat to steady himself. We can't outrun that thing. We have to fight. Arya glanced at him, her expression torn. You're not ready to face a ship of that magnitude. The core's energy. Doesn't matter, Cal interrupted. If we run, they'll keep chasing. If we fight, we might stand a chance. Arya hesitated, then nodded. Very well. But if you're going to use the core, you'll need to trust me. She pulled a pair of small devices from the console and handed one to Cal, neural links. They'll connect my mind to yours, synchronizing our actions. If we're going to fight together, we need to be as one. Cal stared at the device. You sure about this? You're letting me into your head. I have no choice, Arya said, already attaching hers. And neither do you. With a deep breath, Cal placed the link behind his ear. A sharp jolt ran through him as the device activated, and suddenly he felt Arya's presence in his mind, a steady, calm current against the chaos of his own thoughts. This is weird, he muttered. Arya smirked faintly. You'll adjust. Now focus. The cruiser's weapons charged again, its massive cannons glowing ominously. Cal could feel Arya's thoughts guiding him, showing him how to harness the core's energy. Close your eyes, she instructed through the link. Feel the core. Command it. Cal did as she said, and the core responded, its energy flowing through him like a living thing. When he opened his eyes, his hands glowed with radiant light. The cruiser fired again, but this time, Cal raised his hands instinctively. A shimmering barrier of energy formed around the ship, absorbing the blast. Arya expertly maneuvered the ship, and Cal unleashed a counterattack. A beam of pure light erupted from his hands, slicing through the cruiser's shields and striking its engines. The Zyrax vessel reeled, its systems sparking and faltering. They're retreating, Arya exclaimed, a note of triumph in her voice. Cal slumped back into the co-pilot's seat, the glow fading from his hands. That was intense. Arya placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression a mix of relief and pride. You're learning faster than I anticipated. Good, Cal said, his breathing still heavy. Because I have a feeling that was just the warm-up. As if to confirm his fears, the holographic display lit up again, showing a fleet of Zyrax ships entering the sector. Arya's face hardened as she plotted a new course. We need allies, she said. The core's power is great, but we can't fight an entire armada alone. Cal nodded, his resolve hardening. Then let's find them. Because if they think they can take us down, they're in for a hell of a surprise. The stealth ship jumped into hyperspace, leaving the remnants of the battle behind. The core pulsed faintly within Cal, its energy a reminder of the fight ahead. The war had only just begun. The hyperspace jump ended abruptly, depositing the stealth vessel into the orbit of a planet bathed in swirling green and gold light. Arya guided the ship toward the surface, her hands steady on the controls despite the tension radiating from her. Beside her, Cal watched as the planet's terrain came into view, towering crystalline spires, glowing rivers, and cities suspended in midair. This doesn't look like a war zone, Cal muttered, his eyes scanning the landscape. You sure we're in the right place? Arya nodded, her gaze fixed ahead. This is Valerian, home to the remnants. They were once allies of my people, but after the Zyrax expanded their reach, the remnants withdrew from the conflict. If we can convince them to fight, their technology and warriors could turn the tide. Cal frowned. And if they say no? Arya glanced at him, her silver eyes narrowing. Then we fight alone. As the ship landed on a raised platform surrounded by shimmering towers, a group of Valerian warriors approached. They were tall and lean, their translucent armor refracting the golden light around them. Their leader, a man with a crown-like helm, stepped forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Arya. "Princess Arya of the Starborn Dominion," the leader said, his voice deep and resonant. "We wondered when you would come crawling back." Arya stepped off the ship, her posture regal despite the tension. "I didn't come to crawl, Commander Tyrus. Came to fight. The Zyrax are advancing, and their forces grow stronger with each passing day. You cannot remain neutral any longer." Tyrus tilted his head, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Neutral? We are not neutral, Princess. We simply choose our battles carefully. Your war is not ours." Cal, standing behind Arya, couldn't help but speak up. "So what, you're just going to sit here while the Zyrax steamroll the galaxy? Great allies you turned out to be." The Valerian warriors stiffened, their hands inching toward their weapons. Tyrus's smirk faded as he regarded Cal. "And who is this insolent creature?" Arya stepped between them. "This is Cal Grayson, the Corps' chosen host. Without him, there is no hope of victory." Tyrus's eyes widened, his gaze snapping to the faint glow emanating from Cal's chest. "The Corps chose him?" His tone was a mix of disbelief and intrigue. "A human?" Cal rolled his shoulders, the core pulsing faintly as if responding to the insult. "Yeah, and this human just took out a Zyrax warship. So maybe don't judge a book by its cover." Tyrus studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "If what you say is true, perhaps the Corps sees something we do not. But actions speak louder than words. Come, prove your worth." Tyrus led them to a massive coliseum carved from shimmering crystal. The stands were filled with Valerian spectators, their glowing eyes fixed on the newcomers. In the center of the arena stood 3 towering constructs, mechanical beasts with razor-sharp limbs and glowing cores. "These are the Aurelian Guardians," Tyrus announced. "They are powered by the same technology that once protected Arya's people. If you can defeat them, we will consider your request for aid." Cal raised an eyebrow, glancing at Arya. "So, what's the plan? You've got a secret weapon stashed somewhere?" Arya placed a hand on his arm. "You are the weapon, Cal. The Corps will guide you." He sighed, shaking his head. "Of course it will." The arena floor shifted as the constructs came to life, their glowing eyes locking onto Cal. Without warning, the first one lunged, its bladed arms slicing through the air with terrifying speed. Cal dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. The core pulsed in his chest, flooding his senses with clarity. He could feel the construct's movements, its energy patterns, its weaknesses. Acting on instinct, he raised his hand, and a beam of light shot forth, striking the construct's core. The impact staggered the machine, but it wasn't enough to stop it. The other 2 constructs advanced, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Cal dodged and countered, his movements growing more fluid as the core's energy synchronized with his body. "You can't rely on brute force alone," Arya shouted from the sidelines. "Think, Cal. The core responds to intent." Cal gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The constructs moved with precision, but they weren't invincible. He noticed the faint glow of their cores dimming whenever they attacked, their energy momentarily redirected. He let the core's energy surge through him, his mind locking onto the pattern. As the next construct lunged, he sidestepped its attack and struck its core in the split second it dimmed. The machine collapsed in a shower of sparks. The crowd murmured, their disbelief turning to intrigue. Cal turned to the remaining 2 constructs, his confidence growing. "All right, let's dance." The final construct loomed over Cal, its core glowing brighter than ever. It released a deafening roar and unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. Cal summoned a shield of light, deflecting the attacks, but the strain was immense. Arya's voice echoed in his mind through the neural link. "Focus, Cal. You're not alone." He closed his eyes, letting the core guide him once more. Arya's presence in his mind steadied him, her calm strength merging with his determination. Together, they channeled the core's energy into a single, devastating strike. The arena lit up as a wave of pure light erupted from Cal, engulfing the final construct. When the light faded, the machine lay in ruins, its core shattered. The crowd erupted into cheers, their once doubtful expressions now filled with respect. Tyrus stepped forward, his stern demeanor giving way to a nod of approval. "You have proven yourself," he said. "The Veilarian remnants will stand with you." Cal slumped to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. Arya knelt beside him, her expression softening. "You did it." He managed a weak smile. "Told you I don't screw up often." As the Veilarian warriors prepared their fleets for war, Tyrus approached Cal and Arya. "The Zyrax won't wait for us to strike first. Their armada is vast, but your core is our key to victory. Together, we can turn the tide." Cal nodded, the core pulsing faintly in agreement. "Then let's get to it. If they think we're just going to roll over, they've got another thing coming." Arya placed a hand on his shoulder, her silver eyes shining with determination. "The battle ahead will be unlike anything you've faced before." Cal smirked. "Good. I'm just getting warmed up." As the Veilarian ships launched into the skies, their crystalline hulls shimmering like stars, Cal and Arya stood together, ready for the fight to come. The war for the galaxy was far from over, but now they had hope. And hope was a powerful weapon.